As a sleep consultant or someone in training, you've probably heard this from a parent. They were asleep and now 30 minutes later they're awake again. Bedtime seemed fine and then it fell apart. Why? These early wake-ups are one of the most common patterns we see. They're what we call a false start, when a child falls asleep at bedtime, then wakes again 20 to 40 minutes later and struggles to resettle. The good news is they can often be easily fixed. But here's the catch. If you misread what's really going on, the advice you give won't just fall flat, it might make things worse. In this video, you'll learn how to identify a true false start, understand the 4 most common causes, and apply our gentle, science-led framework to support families with clarity and confidence. I'll show you how our coaches approach it, like Michelle, a health professional who came to the programme after experiencing sleep struggles with her own child. She now supports parents returning to work, many of whom are dealing with false starts. Using the exact approach you'll learn today, Michelle helps families resolve these wake-ups quickly, often within just a few days. As a result, her clients feel confident, reassured, and finally enjoy calmer, more connected evenings without rigid routines or cry it out. I'm Lindsay, founder of the Holistic Sleep Coaching Programme. I've trained over 600 professionals across 48 countries to support families using evidence, empathy, and truly holistic methods. And if that's the kind of impact you want to have, there's a link below to book a free clarity call. We'll talk through where you're at, what kind of support you want to offer, and whether our programme is the right fit for you. Let's dive in, because once you understand what's really behind false starts, you'll never second guess your support again. First of all, to make sure you're giving the right suggestions, you need to know what you're dealing with. So let's start with whether it's really a false start. With a false start, a child falls asleep fairly easily at bedtime, but bounces awake again perhaps 20, 30 or 40 minutes later. They're awake, and it may not be that easy to get them back to sleep again. Sometimes the child wakes up and is easy to resettle. This isn't a true false start and is more accurately thought of within the broader challenge of frequent night waking and needing parental reassurance to fall back to sleep. This is also a common occurrence, and let's not forget that it's normal for little ones to need our help and support day and night. Of course it can be tiring and challenging, but it requires a completely different approach to false starts to achieve family sustainability. Okay, so if we're definitely dealing with a false start, you want to know how to fix it, right? There must be a tried and tested way to address these pesky bedtime problems, or I wouldn't be making a video about it, right? Well, sort of. You see, false starts can be caused by different things, and we need to know what the underlying cause is to help provide a targeted solution. If we apply the wrong solution based on a faulty assumption of the cause, we're not going to see results. So in case you were hoping there would be a one-size-fits-all solution here, I'm sorry to disappoint. Stick with me as I walk you through the 4 main reasons little ones get false starts, and to make this easy to remember for you, they're all D's. The first D is for dysregulation. Sleep occurs in the rest and digest state, not a stress state. When little ones are dysregulated, this means they are somewhere on the stress continuum. This can range from mild fussiness to full-blown meltdown. It can be caused by positive stressors such as excitement and negative stressors such as pain, discomfort, anxiety and frustration. The bottom line is that you can't fall asleep and sleep well in a stress state. Now, while you might think that being a baby doesn't look all that stressful, after all they're hanging out, getting cuddled, playing and feeding all day, remember that adult and child stress is relative and different. Play is the work of childhood. Kids learn about life, relationships, boundaries. They process learning, practice skills and get stronger through play. If they've been playing all day, they've kind of had a tough day at the office if you think about it. But it's not just that. Children exist in a complex family ecosystem. Each member of the family affects and is affected by the others. Think about it. Imagine a time when a member of your family has had a tough time. Everyone knows about it, don't they? We don't all exist in our own separate, unrelated bubbles. If someone is tense, little ones will pick up on that. Then there's the environment, activities and context. If there is something going on that's exciting or stressful within the home or the child's world, that is affecting their ability to be calm and relaxed. So you may have already figured this out as I've been talking, but essentially, dysregulation can affect the quality and quantity of sleep. A child may fall asleep easily at bedtime due to a combination of high sleep pressure, predictable bedtime routine, or physical fatigue, but their nervous system may still be on high alert. They'll wake up easily or frequently. You know this yourself. Have you ever tried to fall asleep when you're stressed? You might initially fall asleep, but have you ever bounced wide awake in a cold sweat or woken suddenly and been able to fall back to sleep? So what do you do if you think this is the cause? You focus on regulation throughout the whole day, not just pre-bedtime. I often say that if a child is unsettled, it's like they're riding a white knucker roller coaster all day. By the time they get to the end of the day, they may be exhausted, but they're also amped up. You'll need to provide opportunities for them to ease into a resting state to properly facilitate sleep. Ideas to help include movement. All mammals release stress and tension through movement, so provide as many opportunities as you can for littles to move their bodies and be as active as possible. Skin to skin. This can be a wonderful way to bring calm at any age. Being in skin-to-skin contact releases oxytocin, which calms and aids bonding as well. A really distinct and intentional calm down period prior to starting the bedtime routine helps. For some little ones, the bedtime routine is just not long enough to get them into the right place to be ready for sleep. A calm down routine incorporating activities like massage, sensory play, reading books or jigsaw puzzles can help calm a little one down in readiness for a relaxing bedtime routine. If dysregulation is the root cause of the false starts, the good news is you can turn this around pretty quickly and the effort is well worth it for the quick results. On to our second D, which stands for development. At times of increased acute developmental change, false starts can crop up as a new issue. The good news, if it's this, is that ultimately this is usually just a self-limiting phase. That means it will spontaneously resolve even if you do nothing about it. This underlying factor is often in combination with others though. For example, if a child is becoming dysregulated due to frustration about a milestone they're working on, like crawling or walking or talking, then you may need to address the dysregulation piece with the tips in the previous section. If you think this is the underlying cause, the bad news potentially is that you can't really speed up on a developmental process. You can certainly provide opportunities for little ones to practice whatever skill it is they're working on. You can manage the dysregulation they may be experiencing while they move through this phase. But ultimately, if a child is experiencing separation anxiety or learning a new skill, this is a normal process that we can't and shouldn't try to bypass or accelerate. But it can really help to understand that this is a legitimate reason for the behaviour. Sometimes it's comforting for a parent to know why the new behaviour has crept in, even if they can't always fix it. If development is the cause, the false start behaviour usually settles within a few weeks. It's important to remember though that in this time their sleep needs may have changed, which leads me neatly on to D number 3, which is the distribution of sleep over a 24-hour period. It's a sleep fundamental here. You can only achieve so much sleep in 24 hours. So we need to look both at the total amount of sleep and the distribution of sleep. Let's start with the total amount of sleep. You want to review how much sleep the child is getting in 24 hours. If it's an unrealistically high amount, then they may not have high enough sleep pressure to achieve consolidated blocks of nighttime sleep. Remember that the average total amount of sleep between around 8 months and 2 years is 11 to 14 hours of sleep, with 10 to 11 of those hours occurring at night. If a child is on the high end of this, if they have too many or too long naps in the day, or if they have low sleep needs, then this will backfire and you could pay for it with more broken sleep. The second, subtly different issue is the distribution of sleep. This can interfere with sleep pressure. We all need sleep pressure to feel tired enough to go to bed, but the other process involved with sleep is the circadian signalling. If the naps and bedtime are not optimally organised, you can end up with a mismatch between the sleep pressure and the circadian rhythm. What do I mean? Well, let's say we have a 9-month-old. This child has recently dropped their third nap. Their natural circadian-driven bedtime is 8 p.m. But when their third nap was dropped, the first and second nap timings didn't change much, and maybe their last nap ends at 1 p.m. This little one is now struggling to make it to their previously well-timed bedtime of 8 p.m. They're clinging on for dear life towards the end of the day, and the parent correctly identifies that their child is tired and puts them to bed at 6:30 or 7 o'clock. The parent is accurately interpreting their child's cues and responding with an earlier bedtime, which makes sense on one level, doesn't it? And so much of our cultural expectation around sleep is that bedtimes should be early. So this parent genuinely thinks this is the right call. The problem is that while the parent has correctly identified high sleep pressure, that earlier bedtime is not aligned with the child's circadian rhythm. So what happens is that after a brief nap, essentially, the child wakes up because they've taken the edge off their sleep pressure, but their circadian rhythm is essentially saying, hey, you know what? It's not actually properly bedtime yet, so let's just call this a nap and wake up again. So maybe you're going, aha, at this point. That makes sense, but what do we do? Okay. So there's an in-the-moment thing you can do, but more importantly, there's what you do to prevent this moving forward. You can't always know this kind of issue is going to pop up, so you need a tool that works if you're mid-dealing with this problem. The easiest thing, and often the least stressful, is to simply scoop the child up and let them hang out with their parent until they've built up some sleep pressure and their circadian rhythm is ready for that consolidated block of sleep. I get that some parents might not feel comfortable with this. Maybe they've been told that once bedtime starts, no going back downstairs, or maybe they wanted a quiet evening and now their child has gate crashed. I get it. It might not be ideal, but if the alternative is the parent having to stay in a dark room with a wide awake child who doesn't want to go to sleep while their own dinner gets cold, it's just the pragmatic option. The longer term solution is to redistribute the naps so that the sleep pressure is more closely aligned with their circadian rhythm. Notice what time the child usually easily falls asleep and stays asleep, and aim for the bedtime routine to start about 45 minutes before that time. Next, make sure the last nap before bedtime is sensibly spaced so that the child can comfortably make it to that optimal bedtime. That might mean redistributing other naps or introducing power naps to manage sleep pressure, especially around times when you're transitioning between 3 to 2 or 2 to 1 naps. And the final D today stands for disconnection. Sometimes little ones show us through their behaviour what they need. Disconnection isn't always as disastrous as it sounds, and it can be subtle. Most parents are loving and caring and provide their child with a lot of love and attention, but it's normal from time to time to get into a rut with play, communication, connection time, or activities. It's normal for a child's needs to go up and down. It's normal on occasion for parents to drop balls and get distracted, and all of this can show up in a child falling asleep and then pinging awake because they need to connect. The first thing to remember with this issue is that all these reasons for disconnection are super normal, so normalise it and don't make parents feel like they're horrible people. It happens to all of us from time to time. Nobody is a perfect parent. It may be that a child has simply matured and needs a different type of connection. What was working for their 6-month-old may not work well for their 8-month-old. They might need a different kind of play, might want to hang out more or communicate differently. Maybe they're finding separation anxiety tough, and although it's fun feeling more independent and grown up, it's also scary and they need more physical reassurance and cuddles. Maybe they need a more focused and intentional time of connection with no distractions. Be honest, how many of us try to multitask? I can't be the only parent ever who acknowledges that sometimes I'm trying to parent and also check my phone at the same time. It's really not ideal, and we all know that. But sometimes we just need to check in with ourselves and make sure we're not doing this as a general rule when we're having quality one-to-one time with our children. And if you've been processing all this as we've gone along, you'll probably also have worked out that sometimes it's a combination of factors. It's perfectly possible that during times of change and chaos, like returning to work, a child is dysregulated, but they're also in an acute developmental phase. Plus their sleep needs have changed, so the sleep distribution is wonky. And with all that going on, there's some disconnection too. So hopefully you can begin to appreciate now that fixing false starts isn't about a cookie cutter piece of advice like get an early night. In fact, sometimes false starts can be complex and caused by multiple factors which you need to open-mindedly consider and apply some sleep science to really understand. One size really does fit none when it comes to holistic sleep support. If this has resonated and you'd love to offer this kind of holistic support for confused families looking for sustainable and responsive sleep solutions, then we would love to hear from you. The first step is to book a call and see if we're a good fit. Just click the link below this video. And if you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Speak to you soon.